Visionary. By Douglas Milewski. Elemental P. United States. Copyright 2016 by Douglas Milewski. All rights reserved. Chapter 13. An interurban train linked Ivy Hall to Baltimore. At first, the Board of Trustees for the school refused to have any sort of railway coming into their quiet estate, so the tram stopped at Annapolis, the colony's capital. From there, you either paid for the station wagon or you walked. On my first trip there, we walked. My father carried my bags as we followed a stream of students returning to the university. The buildings there were nothing like Baltimore, where my family had lived. Nothing seemed crowded, stacked up, or hurried. The people here seemed orderly and congenial because propriety was orderly and congenial. They did not have the engines of modern civilization inexorably rolling up behind them, threatening to crush them under their vast steel treads. For the first time in a decade, I wished that I could be there, in Ivy Hall, secure in my obscurity. I had never felt like a murderer in school. The latest turn of events had not escaped Mel. His clerical higher-ups could put two and two together just like I could. Mel confessed to me, "It's all that I can do to keep them from hauling you in." I shrugged. Let them do me a favor. I'd be safer there. Put me in prison. It'll be like the army. I can be a number with a bed and a cot. I'll write poems in my ample spare time and catch up on all the reading that I don't get to do. No chance. That won't work. I need you out there. Without you, I wouldn't know what they're doing. As it stands, we still have no idea where or who Fiat Lux is. Sooner or later, they are going to contact you. I need to know when that happens. I need the details. There is nobody else out there who's going to tell me what I need to know. I'm bait. You were always bait. And if they kill me? They aren't going to kill you. Kidnap you maybe, but not kill you. What a friend. Listen, John, if they kidnap you, you become a hot potato. If they do anything but release you, you'll be a liability. If they release you, you'll bring me information. I'll have the full power of the papers behind me on this. This is a good story. No censorship. They eat this sort of stuff up. Why shouldn't I just ride the rails out of town? That's what I really wanted to do. Then I lose. My associates declare you public enemy number one and a leader of Fiat Lux. I'll provide the description. I still have a school photo of you. You won't run for long. I'm sorry. He used to be my friend. How did you get to be such a bastard? I could hear Mel getting frustrated. Look at what Fiat Lux is doing. They're killing people. This is already out of control. These victims are just as important as you and me in the eyes of God. I've been to every funeral, and I do mean every damned one. I officiated 3 of them. We're both soldiers in God's army now, and we move forward so that God can have victory over his self-righteous Pharisees. Our well-being is no longer important. How would you like your own best friend telling you that? Damnably, he was right, but if you asked any man who was drafted into the army where he wanted to be, I would bet that everyone would say home without a thought. We soldiers don't start the wars, and we don't benefit from the wars, but we do get the privilege of paying the cost. When I arrived home, Cymbeline was tuning her upright piano again. I've got it, she said in a tone in which some stage scientist might declare a breakthrough. String length. I shook my head, leaning against the piano. I don't get it. It's obvious once you think about it. She poked a high note several times, then she poked a low note several times. They had to be the same tone as they combined wonderfully. I never learned any music, I told her. From somewhere deep in my memory, I did recall something. Well, my grandmother did make me take violin lessons. That didn't last long. What's the difference between these notes, she asked, plucking again. One is higher and one is lower. No. String length is the difference. They are the same action, but the lower string is longer than the higher string. And this is a revelation how. She used her hands to make her point, creating smaller circles and bigger circles. If someone talks into a portal which is a small size, and their voice comes out of the other end where the portal is a big size, then there should be a pitch shift. The string length should get longer. What started out as a high voice should get lower. That got my attention. That implied that what we had heard in the Fiat Lux broadcast could not be a man's voice. It has to be a woman's voice, or maybe a child's. I think a woman's. That was nonsense, of course. But women can't do this kind of magic. They aren't good enough at it. They're too inexact. They're too unreliable. She showed her exasperation. That wind-bitten stare of hers returned. We were back to this argument again. Those attacks don't need to be exact or reliable. Maybe it's more like jazz. That's all the craze. Maybe some woman developed a magical jazz theory, where something is close enough in the right way. That was crazy talk in any book. Maybe they just used a woman to say the message. The men did the work. Cymbeline took her hands from the keyboard. What men are you talking about? The wizards are all rounded up, or almost all, and the schools have been closed for a decade. Where are they going to get two of anybody? Boys then. Somebody is out there teaching boys. You only need one wizard who escaped the net or snuck back into the country. He sets up a school and teaches promising young men. That's just stupid. Possible, but stupid. You have to wait until they are grown and hope that the government doesn't find you. Meanwhile, many women were the daughters and wives of wizards. They may have some talent and training already. All they really need is a system. Baseball team. They could be a baseball team and travel about without suspicion. There aren't enough boys on a team. Maybe football, but it's not football season. How about a choir? A choir could move about and they have enough people. So how are you going to find that many women in one city? And what about a boys' choir? Lots of boys on a bus. Or just a bus. Maybe they developed a way to convert horsepower to dicta. That would require a good knowledge of machines. The person already rigged up a camera system and a speaker system. They may even have access to a printing press and know how to use it. No magic required. Steady power. Problem solved. A woman did this. Women don't know how to work with equipment like that. Since when? Most men don't know how to be wizards, but a few of you are. Most women aren't mechanics, but a few are. Lots of us worked in the factories during the war. The woman is just the voice for the team. There's a small group of inventors because building devices takes a long time. They tested their sound system and found a pitch shift, so they pulled in one of their wives or daughters. What's with you? Every time that I suggest a woman, you come up with some other complicated theory trying to explain that a woman couldn't be the culprit. Because women can't do this sort of thing. I've had enough of this today. She stood from her piano. Make your own damn dinner. In all our time together, I had never seen that woman stomp out the door. I had never seen her lose her temper so completely. I had never seen her engage in such a useless and pointless fight. For that matter, I hadn't fought like that for a long time, if ever. I must confess that I did not consider her point of view afterwards. To think that women could do anything that Cymbeline suggested simply didn't fit into my world. What do theosophers really know? My brain simply had no room for a thought such as that. If I could go back in time and apologize for such bigoted statements, I would. I was the product of my time. That is not an excuse, it is merely an observation. I was like those drapes in Mrs. Wallace's boarding house. They were there because they had always been there. Any other sort of drape was unthinkable until fashion changed enough that they seemed old-fashioned. At that point, I could not yet see my views as old-fashioned. No, I had death and mayhem on my mind. I had guilt. I had the potential for more blood on my hands than I already had. As the psychologists would explain, I had many unmet needs, and this prevented me from thinking about the needs of others. If Fiat Lux were truly taking ideas from me, then I should be able to design something that would blow up in their faces. It would look like a good idea, and the numbers would sound right, and even if you knew the math, the numbers would look right, but they wouldn't be right. The results would be the same, but the victims would be of my choosing, not theirs. They would be the ones who died. Did I want that? I felt like a murderer for even considering it. I am no murderer. I spent a lifetime trying not to be a murderer. Moses came down from the mountain and said, "Thou shalt not murder." Yet here I was contemplating that. Yet, was I not already committing murder? Were my actions and my ideas not directly responsible for the reprehensible slaughter taking place? If I sat by and did nothing, how many more would die? Was there such a thing as murder by omission? And who was I fighting here? I had entered into an agreement with the Baroness to promote theosophers. Now here I was plotting my own campaign. Although I could not support Fiat Lux's agenda, I could not call their grievances unjustified. The great wizards were surely deserving of their fates, but the little guys, the everyman wizards who never amounted to anything, these men did not deserve to be hunted down and prosecuted. Like me, they did nothing wrong other than to be part of the system. What of the families involved? These wizards surely had families. Cymbeline was right about that. These men had to have families. Surely they would protect one another. Surely mothers and daughters would cry over their corpses. Is that what I wanted? Fiat Lux was also working to bring Catholics back into legitimacy. That was a worthy goal, even if they were failing. How could we have true freedom if some religions were forbidden for no reason other than bad politics? Did I or anyone have a right to murder these people back? One thing was certain, these questions were too big for me. I needed Luke Mather. I contacted Mel, then he took me to Luke. He drove a long way out of town down roads that I had never seen before, eventually crossing into Pennsylvania. The landscape was pretty much what you'd expect, farms and apple groves. We passed through one area that had been clear-cut by some logging company, with fields of stumps and eroded canyons. For a while I thought that I was on an alien world, like some adventurer on Mars. When the tree line came up, that world fell straight behind. We were now among pines. Mel said, it didn't feel right to keep him behind bars, so we plopped him out here. This way the wrong people don't find him. They can look in Baltimore forever. Luke lived in a homestead near an old iron smelter. It was just him and an old Indian woman living there. He looked every inch of his part, quieter and happier than I had ever seen him, sitting there before his stone house. She was a church volunteer. There had been a bigger house just a few hundred yards away, but it had burned to the ground. Whether through bad luck, some local revolt, or simple arson, it was only an overgrown mass now. Luke kicked about the strange gravel in the road, more glassy than rocky. This was the detritus of the iron smelter, the legacy of an age past. Smelting iron produced material of no good use, other than making gravel roads. On hearing my dilemma, Luke lit his pipe. I had not expected silence out of this man, as he always seemed to have the answer at his tongue, but this time this soapstone preacher stood silent. Whatever happened to that girl you met? We sat under the pines now, squeaking in wicker chairs. Oh, I still know her. She's still around. Not much else to talk about. You should marry her. I thought about her icy winds. We're not there yet. It's easy. Just get it over with. Bring her out here and I'll do the job. How can I get married when all this is hanging over my head? The symbolism of the pine tree over my head wasn't lost on me. I think that you're already married, but you just don't know it. Get this straight, and everything else will follow. You're awful keen to push me into marriage. He winked. You're awful keen to avoid it. This isn't the conversation. This is exactly the conversation, you just don't know it yet. Sometimes I really hated that old man. Luke chuckled. As I see it, you don't stand for anything. You never did. You only believed in what you could prove. If you couldn't prove it, you weren't sure of it, and it wasn't true. Well, you can't prove people, and you can't prove the future, and you can't prove choices. So what does the Bible say? The Bible says lots of things. Love your neighbor. Turn the other cheek. Those are obvious, aren't they? But you can't live with that, can you? That's why you're here. Yeah, I can't live with that. If you marry that woman, or any woman, I don't care who, then you will have a new truth. You will have a wife. You will need to act in her best interest, and she will need to act in yours. She will need protecting. She will mother your children. She is now a fact, not a possibility. How does that affect your decision? My answer needed little thought. The answer dropped out of my brain, so I talked in order to understand it myself. Then I need peace, not war. I don't want my family awash in endless blood. I want to be at peace with my enemy. I want the lion to lie down with the lamb. And how did you decide that? There weren't a lot of options. I can defeat my enemies, ignore them, or make peace with them. I can't defeat. I have no power there. I can't ignore. That only leaves me one option. And so there I was with an impossible mission, and I'd given it to myself. Damn how I loved and despised Luke. How exactly did the lion lie down with the lamb? And which was I, the lion or the lamb? I didn't know, but one thing was self-evident. I had to find Fiat Lux somehow. I had to speak with divine right. The priests in church love to talk about the fight against evil, the war against sin. Using military language gives great emotion to their point, but these words, military words, are the words of the enemy, not the words of Jesus of Nazareth. He did not use the words of conflict in his speech, nor should we. When I used the word fight, I guaranteed that conflict. If I thought of my enemy as my estranged brothers, off on their own harmful direction, then I would seek to unify the family. Those were my options. With fighting discounted, I was left with the notion that I must love my enemy into putting down his arms. On the car trip back, I brought this up to Mel. How do we make peace with them? How do we address Fiat Lux's grievances without justifying their crimes? The church and the party will never go along with them. Nobody will talk. I can see no settlements in this fight. Can't you do something? I would lose my position for advocating it. This is crazy talk. There had to be some way through this. I just started talking, hoping for the best. Then who can we talk to? Let's skip Fiat Lux. Let's talk to the Catholic Church. Let's talk to what remains of the wizards. Let's negotiate with them. Hell, let's negotiate with me. That won't solve a thing. I don't have any death on my hands. They might declare victory. They'll take credit. They can already do that. They don't have to prove anything to take credit. All they have to do is strut around and point to anything, just like a politician. We have to fight. Why? Because that's our duty. That's somebody else's duty. That's what we have an army and police for. Our duty is to make peace. That's harder than war, I figure. So you're waging peace? No, peace isn't a goal. Peace is an idea. You can't have it just like you can't have cake. Eat it and you have none left, but if you don't eat it, you're left hungry. The only real solution is to make it again and again. It's like war, which only exists for as long as you fight it. You are wasting your time. That's what Clark said to me all the time. He said that I was wasting my time. My ideas added up to nothing in the profession. In hindsight, I should have wasted my time, then I might have come up with something that would have helped this world. The profession would have just had to catch up. Any ideas? None. No spell in the world can make everyone happy. No, we need to talk. Negotiate with anarchists? Give them what they want? Everyone will become an anarchist if that works. He was overreacting. Just because they're terrible doesn't mean that they're entirely wrong and that we're entirely right. Anyway, I don't own any guns. I own a typewriter. All that I can is to talk and listen. Listening is a powerful thing. You should know that. Mel stopped talking at that point. So did I. We listened to the road instead. I wonder if Jesus ever listened to the road.